feels like forever since the last game, but the second month of the campaign now begins for QPR with a trip to Wales to face newly promoted but big spending Wrexham. Before we preview that, let's cast our minds back to the last match before the international break as QPR got their first win of the season and their first win under new manager Julian Stefan, beating Charlton 3-1. It was just the response we hoped for, Dave, on the back of that 7-1 defeat against Coventry.
Yeah, it was a really good response. I think we expected that we'd see that. It was just a much better performance all round, and the result was vital. It kind of settled everything down. It had not been a great start at it, but getting that first win calms things down. And I thought he got a bit of stick for the previous couple of games, but he was quite brave with his team selection. I thought we kind of spoke before saying we thought it might be like Hayden and Field and try and stodge up a bit in midfield, but it was the opposite. He was quite wide open in midfield, and you know, we looked pretty good. First half, I thought we were really good. It was a bit similar to the Preston game. I thought we faded a bit second half, and to be honest, 10 minutes to go, I took a point. But the subs changed, didn't they? Saito was really good when he come on, and Kone's goal at the end, I thought was such a good finish. So yeah, it was great to win. Just a massive relief.
Yeah, it did. It ticked so many boxes for us, though, didn't it? If we'd lost that game, there was obviously going to be a big pressure building up on Julian Stefan. So it was nice that we didn't get to that level. Great that we came out firing, like you say. Every player was committed to the cause. There was even Nicholas Madsen jumping to win headers, which we haven't really seen before. Also, we got our first home win of the season early in the campaign, so we've not got that hanging over our heads for 2 or 3, 4 months like we've had the last two seasons. We were far from perfect, but after Coventry, I don't think it matters at all. We got the reaction we needed, and it's helped the whole club, hasn't it, to reset, forget Coventry, and it's been a much better international break as a result. I agree with you. First 25, 30 minutes, we looked great. We were unable to sustain that, but we got another tick in the box because for the first time this season, good options off the bench. Koki Saito, like you say, in particular, with an amazing cameo and goal. So that was positive that we can now impact the game from the bench. The match, though, was sealed by Richard Kone. Your thoughts on his home debut?
Yeah, really impressed. First time I've seen him live, and I was really impressed with him. I think You obviously think of other QPR strikers when you see someone, and it reminded me a little bit of Paul Furlong that he was taking no nonsense. He had his elbows out. He wasn't going to get bullied by the defenders. He wouldn't. If they knocked him over, he'd give them a knock back. He was so composed for the goal. I mean, when he went through on goal, you just thought a goal straight away. He's not going to miss, and you just feel really confident in him. And you look at the strikers we've had in recent years. I mean, it was like duck out the way if you're behind the goal, you're in trouble if someone goes through. But he looked apart. He looks a really good player. I think he'll get better the more he plays. And to be honest, just having someone who can hold the ball up as well was just such a plus for us because we didn't have to play it from the back as much as we have done before. We could hit it up to him and play off him, and I thought that worked quite well.
Yeah, for me, that's the main thing. We were already seeing the benefit of signing a striker who suits how QPR play well. I think Kone, I mean, it kind of illustrated as well that we were right to let Charlie Kelman go because ironically, obviously, it came against Charlton. And Kelman, we said it so many times, he was always going to be hard to play with, a bit like Jan Seller, wasn't he? He was going to need a very specific plan to work your tactics around. Whereas Kone was all action, linking the play, dropping off, smashing into defenders. And then, like you said, when it mattered, calm in front of goal. Could already feel like a case of enjoying whilst we can at QPR, 2 goals in 2 games. Dare we dream of a striker who could get double figures this season? And tactically, you're kind of starting to allude on it there, but it was a big shift against Charlton. The amount of passes in our own half was almost halved from the Coventry game. Goal kicks more direct. I put up some stats on Twitter that the last 5 wins that we've got now, dating back to February, have all come when we've had less of the ball. So was Coventry actually maybe a good early wake-up call for Julian Stefan about what his players can and can't do?
I think so. I mean, we've seen it under Cifuentes the previous 2 seasons. He's tried to play this game model, playing out from the back, and there's nothing wrong with that if it works. But he's found that we haven't got the players to do it, and I think that Coventry game kind of showed it quite early. And I thought it really helped the keeper out. I thought it put a bit less pressure on Walsh to play out. He could just kind of get the ball away, and we could play off Jimmy Dunn and Kone on the halfway line and play in their half. And it wasn't like long ball and aimless. We did play some good stuff at times as well, but I just think changing that goal kick up, it surprised Charlton to start with, and just being a bit more physical around the pitch. We just looked a better side for it, and like you say, it's an odd stat, isn't it, that we just seem to be better with less of the ball than with it. But it's kind of how it is with us, and that may change as the season wears on. But I think you need to get results early on with a new manager, and this is the way for us to do it. To be honest.
Yeah, it's not going too drastic. It's just playing to the strengths of the players that are on the pitch. And it's not like going back to like Gareth Ainsworth football where you're down to 20, 30% possession. It's just literally a case of stopping the messing about at the back, playing the nice stuff, but where we can hurt teams. And the midfield, we've all acknowledged, every single QPR fan, that it's not progressive enough with the ball, but we have exciting attacking players. So if you play off Richard Kone, let our flair players do their thing in the opponent's half. If you're giving up 5-10% possession to enable them to do that, I think it's a positive thing. And when it comes to possession, when we're sat enjoying our Saturday nights after a win, are you really worried about how much possession you've had in the game? No. So it'll be interesting, of course, to see what Julian Stefan does, not just against Wrexham here, but as the months go on, will he try it again as if we get into a better place in the league and things like that? But all the evidence is there that QPR are a better team when we mix it up and play a style that suits, like I say, the 11 players on the pitch. There's going to be a test now up against Wrexham, and it's one of those weeks where history is absolutely irrelevant. Our first trip to Wrexham in almost exactly 22 years, since we won 2-0 on the 16th of September 2003. Actually, one of my favourite away days. That remembers being down to 10 men for the whole of the second half, and then Martin Rowland scored a breakaway goal right at the end. Don't think it'll be same little QPR following there this weekend, sold out already, but Wrexham thankfully got their first win at this level for 43 years in the last game. So at least we aren't the inevitable gift there, but they are still chasing their first home win back at this level. First question, Dave, on Wrexham is there's obviously a bit of jealousy around them now. Where do you stand on their meteoric rise through the league?
It's impressive what they've done. I think most people probably would have watched the documentary they've done over the last few years, and to see where they come from. I remember when, Ryan Reynolds and that come in to take them over, you see it on the news and think, oh, that won't last 5 minutes. But, they've done what they said they were going to do. They've brought them up the leagues, It's not quite the fairy tale when you see how much money they've spent, but the money they got from the documentary and from the sponsorship deals they got from off the back of that has really helped them. It's kind of a different way to do it and to get yourself up the leagues. And, you have to be a bit jealous of them, really, the way they've done it. They seem to be, really united and together. And I don't think this is the end, does it? You look at what they've spent this summer and where they want to go. They want to be in the Premier League, and there's no reason why they can't do that in the next few years.
Yeah, it may well take them a few years, but that definitely must be what the aim is for them. I'm honestly happy for them. I think it's good for any club who are down where Wrexham were to dream, and it's the loyal fans who are being rewarded. I'm sure there's a few Wrexham fans that have called out of the woodwork, but again, fair play to them. Most lower league teams would be giving anything to have owners like what they've got now. It's not going to be easy for them and the fans, though, I think, this season, because every single team is going to want to beat Wrexham every week. And you've just said there, 13 signings, 30 million spent, and that's before add-ons. What have you made of their recruitment, and who stands out on the long list of players who've joined?
Yeah, they seem to do this when they go up. They just kind of build a whole new team, don't they? They don't mess around. They've signed, to be fair, they've signed some good players. They've got a lot of experience in there, and they signed like a lot of older players like Cody and Kiefer Moore. You just know they're good at this level. They've still got James McLean from last year, but it's in midfield where I think it looks the most impressive. Getting Sheaf from Coventry and O'Brien in there. They've got some good players for this level. They're not a normal promoted team. They're not one you think like we just played Charlton who've come up who I didn't think were terrible or anything, but you think they're probably going to be in the bottom half and struggling this year. You just don't really see that with this Wrexham side. They've got pretty much an established championship team already who, should do pretty well this year.
Yeah, Ben Sheaf, you mentioned him there. He was hot property a few years back, wasn't he? So he could make his debut here in midfield. Lewis O'Brien, to me, is a big one. I've watched 3 of their 4 games, and it's his name you hear all the time, all around the midfield. I sense their style of play maybe is already too reliant on Kiefer Moore, and when he's not available, they're going to have to adapt. But he's obviously a very good sign at this level. And I agree with you. Connor Cody reminds me a bit of when we bought in Steve Cook. He's just excellent pound-for-pound defender, isn't he? So a good one. They made a lot of signings in the forward areas like Hardy, Windass, Moore, Broadhead. So there maybe could be an element of them signing too many players. You wonder how they all fit in and how you're going to keep them all happy. But nobody can say they aren't going for it. In terms of their actual performances, though, they've not had the best start statistically. Even in the last game, Millwall had 21 shots to Wrexham's 6, where Millwall had 42 touches in the box. Wrexham only had 7. So somewhat that win came against the run of play. They ranked 22nd for XG4. They've got the highest XG against, 21st for shots per game, 23rd for possession. Usually those stats would be a marker of a team struggling. But with so many new faces, perhaps it's inevitable, Dave, isn't it, that they're having a little bit of a slower start on the pitch. And where would you expect them to end up, though, this season?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to take a little while for them to gel, but they have been in every game. I think that the stats aren't great from them. They look vulnerable at the back, but all the games have been pretty close. I think they'll probably be in and around the playoffs this year. I don't think they've got quite enough to be pushing for automatic promotion, but I think they're definitely top half around the playoffs. You got to see with the money they've got. If they're around mid-table halfway through the season, they could probably spend again in January and have a real push for it. So I think they'll be around there, around top up, definitely top half of the table, but close to the playoffs.
Yeah, when you spend the amount of money they have, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think they've done bare minimum enough to make sure they're not going to struggle. So that's probably the
Oh
key
yeah.
aim for them this season. So many new faces. There's going to be a bedding in period. Probably going to come back to bite me saying this, but it genuinely does feel like we're maybe better playing them now than in November, December, when they have settled down and the players know where their roles are and things like that. But they'll have players in this game making debuts, others with their positions now under threat. So they're all going to be keen to make an impression, and QPR are going to need to be at it. Should add before we move on to QPR that they're going to have a change in goal because one of their new signings, Danny Ward, dislocated his elbow. Ouch, against Millwall. Expect Arthur Okonkwo to come in. QPR then, Dave, transfer window now thankfully closed. No further signings since we were last on a show. Did get the news that Jack Colback's officially gone, and we have to mention him for one last time. Taylor Richards mutually agreed the final payoff for his final year. No big news in terms of signings, though, but Ronnie Edwards couldn't quite get it over the line. Are you disappointed?
A little bit. I think it would have been great to have him back. It always seemed a bit of a long shot to get him back, but sounds like they got quite close to it. And I know the player, was keen on it. It's a shame we couldn't get him, but I don't think it's the end of the world, and I don't think that whole deal's over yet. I think they could go back for him in January. If he's not playing for Southampton, you might get him a bit cheaper as well. If he, it doesn't look like he's going to be a regular for him. So I wouldn't say that's over yet. We look all right at centre half, especially if Clark Salter comes back and plays a game before Christmas would be nice. But I think we're okay. I don't think we're desperate in that position. So it's a shame we didn't get him, but I don't think it's a disaster.
Yeah, I've got the same thing on my notes here. It just says January, but my thought was the same, that if he's not playing for Southampton, they're going to probably accept a few £1 million for whatever player in January, if they, depending where they are in the league as well. So I don't think it's over. I'd agree. And you are right, though. Jake Clark-Salter, we need him fit and available sooner rather than later. And it kind of takes us on to the lineup, because my first question is going to be, who's going to take the left centre-back spot here? Because Steve Cook, as we said most weeks, looked on his last legs at the start of the season. But Mbenge, he's been a bit scary at times. Who plays there this week for you?
I'd probably go on Mbenge again. I thought he right. He was scary in that Charlton game. He was really good at points, and then a bit of a disaster. I thought he was lucky not to give a penalty away and get sent off in the second half. But I'd probably go with him. He's got that bit of pace about him, and he can bring the ball out. And I think it probably would make sense to let him and Morrison have a little run together in the side. Cook just hasn't. He looks like he's dipped a fair bit this year. I think that might be a difficult one for him. And Wrexham are quite physical in the forward area, so that might be a battle that Mbenge likes. That might go wrong for us if he takes it too far, but I think it might be a game that suits him.
Yeah, I'm going to go the opposite. I actually think it could be Steve Cook, because against Kiefer Moore, Steve Cook maybe is the one to battle him. And Mbenge, I'm just not quite keen on yet. I have to admit, the raw attributes are there, but he's so wild and unpredictable. And I put a comment on the last show when someone put it in, is it a good trait for a centre-half to be unpredictable like he is? And I'm not sure it is. I mean, some players are good one game, awful the next. And Mbenge seems to go from the sublime to the ridiculous in about 5 minutes. So jury is out, and it's one for the comment. So you'd pick at centre-half there. StōTE on our forum actually raised the question whether Sam Field could be converted to that position if Jake Clark-Salter is not going to be back for a long time, especially if he's not getting games in midfield. And that takes us on to the midfield, because that's the kind of the point is it was a big surprise that Sam Field didn't start. As far as I can remember, 4 years he's been here, it's the first time he's probably not started when he's been fit. So what did you make of that? And do you think Madsen and Vale will keep the places at Wrexham?
Yeah, I mean, I think like most people, I was surprised he didn't play. But to be honest, he hasn't played well this season or in pre-season. He hasn't looked anywhere like his best. So it shouldn't have been that big a shock that he was left out. I said before, I thought it was quite a brave decision to go with that midfield. It was, you had Varane sitting there and then the other two just going and playing and had mixed results on the day. I'm not sure it'd be the right balance for an away game, especially one like this. But it'll be interesting to see what he does. I mean, will he carry on with that and just keep going with Madsen or bring Field in? Personally, I'd probably bring Field back for this one. I think it's a bit more of a physical battle in midfield on the weekend, but I'm not sure he will. I think he might continue with Madsen again.
Yeah, technically Madsen and Vale played well enough to probably earn their keep in their place. Away from home, though, ideally we'd probably see Hayden and Varane, but Hayden played 290 minutes of Jamaica.
Yeah,
So on one hand, it's positive that we know Hayden is now match fit, but it makes it less likely he starts here. I do think Vale, though, especially deserves to keep his place, and it's just maybe a question mark of whether Field will return with it being an away game. Behind the striker, plenty of question marks there. You've got Kwame Poku, originally meant to be back here, but I thought Julian Stefan sounded a bit doubtful in his last interview that I heard from him. We had no news as we speak on Ilias Chair. Paul Smith withdrew from the Northern Ireland squad, so I assume that makes him a doubt. Who do you think does start behind the striker?
yeah. I think if Smith's fit, he'll probably start. I thought he did quite well in the first half, playing off the left. But yeah, like you say, it's very hard to know with the injuries, isn't it? I think Dembele will probably start. You'd think Saito, you know, I know he hasn't had much of a pre-season. You'd think he'd be knocking on the door, and if Smith's not available, if he's not 100%, you'd probably go Saito on the left. He did really well coming off the bench. The really good goal he scored. So I'd probably say it'd be him and Dembele. I'd probably be the two wide players.
Yeah, I've got the same. I think it'd be Dembele and Saito, unless Smith is fit to start. And then I think it would be Smith and Saito and Dembele maybe off the bench. And then one of Madsen and Vale in the middle. Saito and Smith were both obviously great against Charlton. It's just going to be about consistency for a few of these players. Can they play like that every week, week in, week out? That's the big question mark always at QPR, isn't it? Should add as well, we only had three QPR players, Walsh, Morrison, and Dembele, who've started all four league games. And only Walsh and Morrison have played every minute. So it shows you how much chopping and changing there's been in the opening month. And let's see what Wrexham brings. And it's just predictions to finish. Are we coming away from Wales with any points, Dave?
I think we've got a chance. I think it'll be a really tough game. I think Wrexham will probably be the favourites, but they do look a bit vulnerable at the back. So I think we can get a draw there, maybe 1-1. I think we'll get a point at the weekend.
I think it comes down to who scores first. Wrexham score, get the crowd into it. It's going to be a hard afternoon, but if we can get the first goal, they're not used to losing at home, used to losing in general, really. So it could become edgy and work in our favour. Overall, I actually suspect we could be on the end of a narrow defeat here, 2-1. But it's worth pointing out there's already only 4 unbeaten teams in the league after 4 games, only 100% record. So it's tight. And the old adage applies here, doesn't it? If you get back-to-back wins at any point, you're going to transform your season. And let's hope QPR can do that with a win here. And that's it for this week. Do comment with your predictions and your thoughts on the lineups we may see. We'll be back next week to preview the home match against Stoke City. And until then, thank you for watching and come on, you R's.